I'm going to call on homeboy again.
Okay.
Russell Nelson.
Rusty, baby.
Yeah.
That's the man right there.
For the wrath of God is provoked by governments that legalize abortion.
Well, I'm exercising my God-given right to choose, right? So what do you say to people who are kind of conflicted with this dilemma?
What's the difference between birth control and abortion, and even like morning after pill? Is that also considered? Like, would that be more birth control? Would that be more abortion? What do you think? Welcome to the Third Hour podcast, where we talk about real topics within the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, like abortion. I am Mimi Bascom. I'll be your host, and I'm joined by our special co-host today, Tautai Fano.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, he's been with us before. You'll
Yes, I
probably
have.
see him a lot in the future. So thank you for being here, Tautai.
Thank you for having me. I truly, a quick shout out to Eric. I miss you, buddy. I wish you were here. I'm sorry. I'm sure Mimi wishes you were here too.
And I'll try not to be too disappointed either.
I know. I know you really wanted to meet Eric, and so I apologize that I'm here. So
Oh my
I
God.
guess
I'm
I
excited
don't
to be
go
here.
home now.
I'm excited to be here.
No, we're excited. We're very excited also to have Jessica Spack. So Jessica is the president of Latter-day Saints for Life, and we thought she would be the perfect person here to talk about this topic. So Jessica, how are you?
I am so well. It's a wonderful snowy day in Utah.
It is.
And
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. I'm glad I got to see it for a minute before we left.
Yes. So you lived in Utah. Did you grow up here?
Yep, whole life.
And you recently moved away,
I did.
and you're in Missouri now.
Yes, I am.
Which is so exciting.
Yeah, it's been a party. It's been a big journey, and we love it. And we're still a little confused about like the why, but we're rolling with it.
I respect you so much, and like just letting literally God prevail in your life 110%. And
It has to be my motto every day. Baby.
no, we're so excited that things lined up with your schedule while you're visiting Utah so we can have you in person. So thank you again for being here. Like we said before, we're going to be talking about abortion today. And we wanted just to preface this by saying we know it's a very heavy topic, and we're going to do our best to be very sensitive to anyone who may have experienced this or just have strong feelings about this topic. We know that even within our audience of mostly faithful Latter-day Saints is who watches us, there's a wide variety of opinions about this topic. And so we really want to be sensitive to both sides of the issues and try to bring up some of these real questions. A lot of you actually submitted questions to us. So thank you for doing that. And we want to get to as many of those as we can today. But we thought we would just start with the church's stance on abortion. None of us are official spokespeople for the church. We are just normal members, and we're going to be talking a little bit about our opinions. But actually, before we get to the church's stance, Jessica, tell us a little bit about how you are obviously very outspoken about this topic. You're the president of Latter-day Saints for Life. Tell us about that organization and kind of how you got on this journey of talking about this.
Okay, so I guess it's two different answers, like how I got involved with the issue of abortion and the pro-life world, and then how Latter-day Saints for Life came to be. I'd say probably my introduction to the world of the pro-life sphere was about the time I was pregnant with my first kid. And I just kind of stumbled across, like purely by accident, this like YouTube video, like behind the scenes of an upcoming movie called Unplanned. I don't know if you've seen that before.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It's based on the true story of a woman who had an abortion, and she also worked as the director of a Planned Parenthood facility and was integral in performing thousands of abortions. And it's her story of like seeing what happened. She saw an abortion procedure, and she had a spiritual awakening and coming to Jesus, of finding peace and redemption through that. And now she, saves women from going through what she went through, and also saves children, and encourages other people to leave the industry. But in the behind the scenes of this movie and this YouTube video, I found myself in tears over the spiritual nature of the issue, as well as the frankness of what was really happening. Because growing up in the church my whole life, I don't think anybody like really had used the word abortion to me, except like vaguely in general conference talks, like in a laundry list of sins, like thou shalt not like view pornography or participate in abortion, or like whatever the bad things were. So I knew it was a bad thing. And I knew that from my mission, you had to have a special interview with the mission president if you have had an abortion. But that's about all I knew. But this show showed me that it was a strong, like there's a religious and spiritual nature to this issue, and that there's a good and a bad, and that God is reaching out to help and save people, and Satan is reaching out to stop God's plan from happening. And I was overwhelmed by how powerful that was, and also like kind of surprised that nobody in my church had talked to me about it. So from that, later, after I had my first kid, I was very sick while I was pregnant. After I had my kid, I wanted to begin volunteering to protect life. I began volunteering with an organization called Pro-Life Utah, which I loved. I quickly began doing more and more for them. I thought I'd volunteer there for a long time. I loved the good that they did. I mean, this past year, they just saved, I think, over 50 babies who were going to be aborted, and they helped their mothers and their children to live, because the reasons for the abortion wasn't like, you know, the crazy things that you hear about. It's just they needed some more help. They needed some support, and they stepped in to do that. And I loved being a part of that. But a little over a year ago, probably a year and a half ago, I felt the Spirit tell me that it was my time to be done. And I didn't really know why, but I walked in that. And I thought I'd just have a good time with my kids. But I felt more and more of an impression to do something more. I had seen from my perspective at Pro-Life Utah that there were a lot of people of other faiths who were stepping up visibly and working together to save lives and to support women. And there were Latter-day Saints in Utah who were doing that, but it wasn't a very like organized effort, not a very visible effort. And I felt like there's a lot more that could be done. I stumbled across a Facebook page and an Instagram page, both called Latter-day Saints for Life. And I loved the content that it had on there, but it had been totally inactive for over a year. So like on an impression or on a whim, whatever you want to call it, I just sent them a DM and I was like, hey, I like your page. Can I have it? And
so you slid into their DMs and be like, let me get it.
And they were like, yeah.
They just said yes.
I mean, they were like, yes. And they're like, I guess we should talk to you on the phone. So they talked to me on the phone for like 20 minutes, but then they gave me the login. So
shoot your shot, I guess.
Yeah.
Literally.
Crazy.
And it sat there on my lap for a minute, and I knew God was telling me it has to be more than just a social media page. He's like, that was great, but this isn't enough. So I reached out to some of my good friends in the pro-life movement who were very experienced, and we created Latter-day Saints for Life. And now, a little over a year later, we are over 500 members strong across 36 states and 6 countries. Wow, and we've created lots of free resources on our website to help members to talk about it, to help women who are in need. And we look forward to making more of an impact in the years to come.
Wow, that's incredible. And
Crazy.
So what would you say is like the mission? Because I feel like, you know, the church has their stance on abortion. So what would you say is like the mission of your organization?
Yeah. Latter-day Saints for Life, our mission is to be the voice that the church doesn't need to be. Like the church doesn't have to do everything, right? It's given us everything we need to do, everything we need to know to be able to act and do a good thing in the world. So our mission is to gather Latter-day Saints to teach the doctrines of the church, which are extremely pro-life, fun fact, and then to spread that with the world and to save lives and protect our preborn brothers and sisters who are coming to this earth.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else about your organization that you want anyone to know before we jump in?
Just that there's room for every Latter-day Saint. Like, I think like people will say this to me sometimes. They'll say, isn't it kind of redundant to even have this organization? Shouldn't that just be a thing that every member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints should believe? But I mean, if you don't, like, I see you, because not everybody does in the church. But I mean, that's why there's a need for it. We need to come together in a space where we can talk about it and teach the doctrines, and also to show the world who we are. So, I mean, if we had every member of the church sign up, that would be an incredible statement for the world, and also empower us to be able to work together to do more.
Got it. Well, that's incredible. And what a cool like origin story for that whole thing.
It's all God.
I respect that so much, of just like how faithful and like reliant it seems like you are on the Spirit, like just based on talking to you. So I'm really glad that you're here to be tackling this topic with us. So without further ado, let's jump into some of these questions. But first, let's read the church's stance on abortion, because obviously that is, you know, what we're going off of. Everything after that will kind of just be our own opinion.
Are you going to read it from the Book of Secrets?
The
church handbook? The general handbook that nobody reads?
I got This one I think was from Church Newsroom.
Okay, it's almost identical to
That's
what the
I thought. I
handbook
think
says.
I did go over both.
Yeah.
But I will go ahead and read that.
Okay.
So it says, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believes in the sanctity of human life. Therefore, the church opposes elective abortion for personal or social convenience and counsels its members not to submit to, perform, encourage, pay for, or arrange for such abortions. The church allows for possible exceptions for its members when pregnancy results from rape or incest, or a competent physician determines that the life or health of the mother is in serious jeopardy, or a competent physician determines that the fetus has severe defects that will not allow the baby to survive beyond birth. Even these exceptions do not automatically justify abortion. Abortion is a most serious matter. It should be considered only after the persons responsible have received confirmation through prayer. Members may counsel with their bishops as part of this process. The church's position on this matter remains unchanged. As states work to enact laws related to abortion, church members may appropriately choose to participate in efforts to protect life and to preserve religious liberty. So that's that. Pretty locked in on.
Pretty cut and dry right there. Pretty black and white right there.
And we have several quotes from apostles and prophets and scriptures that we can refer to later. But obviously, abortion is very common in the US and around the world. I guess we can start by asking, how do you think we got to that point?
I mean, the easiest answer would be a departure from God and from family values as God has ordained it to be. Because the farther away you stray from that, the more appealing abortion becomes, and the more abortion is integrated, the more the family falls apart, and the more distance you will become from God, because it breaks our spiritual connection with our Heavenly Father. It creates a spiritual wound for us and our families that can take generations to heal. I don't know if that answers the question, but
it does.
No, the first thing you said stuck out to me. Departure from God is literally and what you said earlier is Satan doesn't want the family to be together. He does anything to make the family not be together. And so this is one of the tactics I believe that he uses. You know what I mean? So I agree with you right there.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask this too, which we actually have a church answer to this question, but obviously best case scenario, every child is brought into the world through a marriage, ideally, a sealing, but that's not always the case. So many people have the question then, what should happen when a child is conceived out of wedlock? And we do have an answer to that as well. Tautai, would you mind reading that there?
No, not at all. All right. So it says, when a child is conceived out of wedlock, the best option is for the mother and father of the child to marry and work towards establishing an eternal family relationship. If a successful marriage is unlikely, they should place the child for adoption. Any
thoughts or additional comments on kind of that scenario?
So 2 different things I'd probably add. Number one, I was very impressed by last July's Liahona issue. July 2022, digital only edition. So you might not have seen it in your physical copy, but the digital only edition had a series of 5 articles all about being single and pregnant. And they had stories of 4 different women who were in a situation where they were single and pregnant. And they walked through their experiences of how they incorporated the Lord in making the right decision for them and their children. And I mean, it includes women who were raped, or at least one woman who was raped. That includes 2 women who chose adoption, I believe, at least one who chose to be a single parent. And it can walk through that the choice to make isn't always really clear, but every woman can feel more empowered to choose life if they have the support of their family and their bishop, and especially of the Lord. And if they incorporate the Lord in their decision and they think about what he would like them to do and what would be best for the child, then they will get the strength and power they need to be able to make the right decision. So I think that's one really important thing. So if anyone finds themselves in that situation, I encourage them to look at that series of articles. Okay. The other thing is, what should we do if someone is pregnant and unwed? What should we do as a church? I think we could do a lot better at embracing and loving these women. A lot of women will stop coming to church if they're pregnant, or they'll be pushed toward abortion to hide it. But I mean, if we notice someone who's pregnant and single, Like that should be the number one person we should be ministering to in the ward at that time. They need so much help. I mean, I was married and pregnant, and it was like super, I can't even describe how much of a hell it was for me. It was so hard because I didn't know how hard it would be. I didn't prepare and get the support that I needed. I didn't know how to ask for it. And I can't imagine putting myself in that situation for someone who didn't have a supportive relationship. So, I mean, we can do a lot more as ward members to support as well.
That's a great point. And speaking of that, are there any resources? I mean, obviously, if the church is pro-life, or at least, you know, I don't know if we want to use labels because they can be so controversial, but I mean, if the church like wants the sanctity of life and wants children being born, do they offer any resources for women rather than having an abortion? If they're wanting them to go up for an adoption, like what resources does the church have?
Yeah, so this is an excellent question that a lot of people have asked me from other faiths, because a lot of other Christians will have, as part of their main ministry for their church, they'll have a pregnancy resource center where there's like the physical building, and women will come in and they'll help them get ultrasounds and baby supplies and whatever they need. We don't have that brick and mortar kind of institution, but we have as much and often more that we can offer to pregnant women through our bishops and through our relief societies and through our elders quorums. And it's just not necessarily like advertised to the public like that, which is fine. It doesn't necessarily need to be. But that's why we created on our website our pregnancy resources page, which is at latterdaysaintsforlife.org/pregnancy-resources. And we've assembled all those things that someone might be able to receive through their ward, as well as some of the other community resources that they could access as well, or through the government, because there's a lot that is there to help them. And if they just don't know about it, then they're not going to access it.
Right.
Gotcha.
So is that like financial resources or like baby supplies?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's bishop storehouses where you can get food. I mean, if you live near a DI, like in Utah, you could, get a job. You can get free clothes, free furniture. You can also get those kinds of things through the ward, through donations, financial aid. Like really, there's so much. And the self-reliance courses that the church offers for free as well to help you get a better job, get a better education. There's so much out there that isn't necessarily targeted to pregnant women, but is absolutely going to change their lives. Like these are the kinds of things that, will turn them to fear to think that they can't handle it. And I say that because I know of women who've been on the sidewalk going into their abortion, and they found out that there was help. And they were like, oh, I didn't feel like my apartment was good enough to have a baby in there. They're like, well, we can help you like remodel the baby's bedroom. And they're like, oh, that's okay. That would be helpful if we could get like new flooring and like walls and furniture. That would change everything. And people just don't know that that's there.
Wow. Well, I'm glad we're talking about this because I didn't know that was an option for people. And I think you're right. Like we just need to talk about it so people know to ask. And I think part of it too, though, is like reducing shame and church culture around this whole thing so that people don't stop going to church when they're found in that situation, but instead turn to their ward members. Not only do we have ministering like you talked about, but like there are actual resources that they can have access to. So that's great.
Exactly.
So you've been mentioning a lot about like these women, right? And how they choose to keep the baby around, or they choose not to get married, or to get married if they're out of wedlock and whatever. So I'm going to kind of push back just a little bit because I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this. Our church is very heavy on free will and free agency, right? That is one of the main reasons. That is why we're here, right? We chose to be on this earth, right? But when we're here, you don't have to do anything you don't want to in this life. And that's the beauty of the church, right? God has given us commandments. God has given us everything that we need. Now it's on us to use the Spirit or whatever, right? So when I'm hearing, especially when this topic of abortion, the two sides, right? Pro-life and pro-choice. When I hear pro-choice, I'm like, well, we are very heavy on being able to choose for ourselves, right? And so that could be something that's brought up in this conversation is like, well, I'm exercising my God-given right to choose, right? So what do you say to people who are kind of conflicted with this dilemma?
I'll refer them directly to our president, Russell M. Nelson, who said in 2008, "A woman's choice for her own body does not include the right to deprive her baby of life and a lifetime of choices that her child would make. As Latter-day Saints, we should stand up for choice, the right choice, and not simply for choice as a method." So we do believe in choice, and we believe in making the right choice. We believe in eternal families and celestial life, and we want to help people get there, not tear them down on their path.
And so we say, it's interesting because we talk about the right choice, and President Nelson used that phrase. But I guess going into like the political side of it, I know in even the church's statement, it says that that members, sorry, I just want to make sure I read this right. Members may appropriately choose to participate in efforts to protect life and preserve religious liberty. I guess just going into like the political side of it is, should members be voting for laws and lawmakers who will keep abortion illegal? Because we talk about the right choice, but at the same time, we also don't believe in drinking alcohol, yet that's a law. I don't know. I thought it'd be interesting to hear your take on that as far as like laws go.
I'm going to call on homeboy again.
Okay.
Russell Nelson.
Rusty, baby.
Yeah.
That's the man right there.
For the wrath of God is provoked by governments that legalize abortion.
It pretty much sums it up right there. I mean,
The government has a role in it. I mean, I have a strong enough libertarian streak that I don't want the government in my business, but that doesn't mean we have the right to end the lives of children.
So it seems, according to you, and tell me if I'm making a mistake here, but like abortion is a higher sin than other things. Like if you're talking about making drinking alcohol illegal, you're saying that abortion is a greater sin and that should be illegal even if other things aren't.
Well, I mean, it's like unto killing, right? Which we see in the Doctrine and Covenants. Well, let me back up. So we have the 10 Commandments in the Bible, right, including thou shalt not kill. Mm-hmm. In the Doctrine and Covenants, we get just a little bit of extra bonus context, right? And that includes thou shalt not kill, nor do anything like unto it. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, call it what you want to. I mean, but it's considered something like that, in which we know it is under that umbrella because it's included in the church's Topics and Questions article on abortion. Mm-hmm. That is a scripture reference there. So it applies to that. I mean, I don't consider it nearly in the same realm as drinking like alcohol or coffee.
Sure.
And you can have your own political views about what that should be, either like one way or the other. But abortion is different.
Yeah. I have another like kind of doctrinal political question along these lines too. So one of the biggest questions is, where does life start? Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And so for us, life started long time ago, right? As members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, mm-hmm. premortal life is big for us, right? Plan mm-hmm. of salvation, right? So our spirit life started heck a long time ago. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? But as far as like the physical aspect of it, where does life start then? And then when can we start considering it to be like something we take into consideration?
Yeah, that's an excellent question that we get all the time. And actually, I think it's extremely pertinent because when life begins is going to determine if this is a sin, right?
Exactly.
At least in my opinion, it would. So we can get technical and then we can get more doctrinal, I guess. Right. So to go more technical, I'm also going to refer to homeboy Russell Nelson, who as world-renowned surgeon and also apostle of the Lord.
He might know what he's talking about in both aspects. You know what I'm saying?
Literally.
Yeah, he might know something. He said that the onset of life is not a debatable issue. It is a fact of science. He said this in his general conference talk, Reverence for Life. Actually, I can double check and make sure that's accurate.
Okay.
So I'm not misspeaking.
What was that he said? A fact?
The onset of life is not a debatable issue, but a fact of science. And that life begins at conception. From Reverence for Life General Conference.
Period. And I will note, though, that I don't think there is an official church stance on that.
You're right.
But that is a quote from our current prophet. I think it was said before he was prophet. But regardless,
as an apostle,
a medical professional and an apostle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the church doesn't, like, as an entire church, come out and make a statement about it. Mm-hmm. But that's if you want to get technical. That's the closest I can find to a technical definition from the church. If you want to get more doctrinal, I really appreciate what Elder Anderson said in 2021, The Personal Journey of a Child. And basically said that, you know, people can debate on if life begins when heart beats or when you can first feel movement or whatever it is. But for us as Latter-day Saints, there's no question that it's a child from the premortal world coming to this earth. And it doesn't change our duty as Latter-day Saints, which is to welcome and love and embrace these children. Mm-hmm. That's our role. So, I mean, you can get technical if you want to, but we know enough to know that our job is to accept and love them and not to, you know, make cutoffs of when, we don't want them here.
Well, here's another question for you then. Birth control is something that the church is not against. Mm-hmm. I have the little statement here. This is from the Gospel Topics essay. Oh my gosh, it's kind of long, but basically
It's critical.
Should I just read the whole thing?
Go for it.
Okay.
I can like switch off with you if you want.
Okay. Yeah, let's do a little
tag
Sunday
team,
school.
popcorn reading or something like that. Okay.
So this is from the Church Gospel Topics essay on birth control. Children are one of the greatest blessings in life, and their birth into loving and nurturing families is central to God's purposes for humanity. When husband and wife are physically able, they have the privilege and responsibility to bring children into the world and to nurture them. The decision of how many children to have and when to have them is a private matter for a husband and wife.
God has a plan for the happiness of all who live on the earth, and the birth of children within loving families is central to his plan. The first commandment he gave to Adam and Eve was to be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. The scriptures declare, children are an heritage of the Lord. Those who are physically able to have the blessing, joy, and obligation to bear children and to raise a family. This blessing should not be postponed for selfish reasons.
Sexual relations within marriage are not only for the purpose of procreation, but also a means of expressing love and strengthening emotional and spiritual ties between husband and wife.
Husband and wife are encouraged to pray and counsel together as they plan their families. Issues to consider include the physical and mental health of the mother and father, and their capacity to provide the basic necessities of life for their children.
Decisions about birth control and the consequences of those decisions rest solely within each married couple. Elective abortion as a method of birth control, however, is contrary to the commandments of God.
Wow.
So we have, that is pretty clear, like what the church, well, I don't even know if I would say that's pretty, okay, let me back up. So we are responsible for deciding when is the right time to bring children into the world. If we're physically able, we're commanded to do it. And so it seems like here it doesn't say you can't use birth control. It's pretty,
Correct.
to me, I take that as like you can use birth control because should be a decision, between the couple and God. But then it also says abortion, is not good. So like, what's the difference between birth control and abortion, and even like morning after pill? Is that also considered? Like, would that be more birth control? Would that be more abortion? What do you think?
Yeah. Can we get a basic definition for birth control for maybe some of us who don't know what that means? Maybe
single guys.
Yeah,
I mean, birth control, including things such as the birth control pill, which is very common. There are other hormonal forms of birth control for women, condoms or other barrier methods that essentially their primary purpose is to prevent the creation of a child. You can wade into some waters, like getting into if some of them might be what are called abortifacients, which could potentially have the effect of ending the life of an already conceived child or preventing the implantation thereof.
And that would be the morning after pill.
The morning after pill is essentially the same thing, as far as I understand, of the birth control pill, just a stronger dose.
Oh, got it.
So it can prevent conception and it can also prevent implantation possibly. We don't necessarily know like the statistics on that. At least I am not. If you like find anything, like drop it in the comments. I'd love to find out more, but it seems like something that's pretty hard to study. And that's going to be something that's going to be between the couple and the Lord to pray about, of what is a safe and respectful method if you choose to use birth control. I mean, but as far as Latter-day Saints for Life is concerned, we consider the morning after pill as a form of birth control, and not the same as like having a full elective abortion procedure.
Gotcha.
Okay. Interesting. I'm still just trying to wrap my head around, like President Nelson saying like it's at conception. I just don't, I need to look into like the morning after pill more. I haven't like formed my own conclusion. I guess that's why I'm asking you so many questions about this, but I just feel like if it's at conception is when that's when the life is there, but then there's a morning after pill that can like undo that. I don't know.
Because we were talking about when does sin start, right? Or like because you said like when life is, that's when we can start gauging or measuring when the sin is going to be, done or whatever. So yeah, that's something that I can't,
Yeah, it's something I encourage people to pray about and study, especially if they're considering using birth control, or if they are already, to see if it's something that's going to be good for them, between them and the Lord to use. And it's also something that can be kind of a hot button topic for pro-life people. As far as Latter-day Saints for Life is concerned, we make room for people who are super against it and people who think it's fine. So
yeah, because there's other Christian religions that are just anti-birth control.
That's true.
But it seems like the difference here with our church is that birth control is preventing that life from being brought into the world versus abortion is the life is already there and it's removing that. And so I guess that's where the difference kind of is.
I think too, and this might be like super like basic and like in your face primary kind of thing, but I'm just realizing now that a commandment like that's pretty black and white is you have to have kids in this earthly life. You know what I mean?
It's the first commandment ever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm
if you're physically able.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was gonna get into that. Like if you're physically able, let's say you are physically able. If you are not having kids, then you're not following commandments, right? And like I totally forgot. Adam and Eve, their first thing was to multiply and replenish the earth. Now they didn't know how, blah blah blah. After that, but I think it's really powerful to know that, like Jessica just said, we are here to have babies. You know, so this whole topic of abortion should be pretty simple, right? We should all be pro-life because that's following the commandments, essentially, right? So what would you say to, and maybe thank you for reminding me, I have family close to me that is unable to fulfill that commandment, to fulfill God's orders, right? Are they lacking in blessings? Like how, because they're not able, like how are they able to receive those blessings of being parents and bringing people into the world?
That's an excellent question. And I think it's important to talk about when we talk about abortion, because especially people in that situation can feel really, I guess, alienated, hurt, I guess, by it. Just the idea that people would end the lives of their children, but they can't have their own, or feeling guilty that they can't have kids if they want to. First of all, I mean, it's no reflection of someone's faithfulness or righteousness. And it can be a challenge in this life that may be able to be overcome in some way with the Lord's help, or maybe it won't be in this life. But we do know that there's a promise for those who have that righteous desire. They will have that opportunity in the world to come. And some of them might have the opportunity to parent through adoption as well.
Yeah. And what would you say to people? Like I said, I'm sorry I'm asking a lot of questions, but I hear stuff on social media a lot about like how the adoption industry is corrupt, right? Or like it's not a really good system to put these children in. You're setting them up for failure. But aren't there people out there who literally can't have kids and they want to adopt, right? Or am I mistaken in that at all? Or
so it sounds like you are hearing what people talk about, conflating a lot with like foster care system.
Okay.
And like newborn adoptions. The weight limit in the United States is years long to adopt a newborn child. There are many couples waiting to adopt a child, and there aren't enough babies to put up for adoption. Hopefully all of them will get to have their biological parents well enough to take them. But you know what I mean. The foster care system is a lot more elaborate and complex. I've been a foster parent, and not all of those children are up for adoption. Most of them are not. Most of them have the goal of reunification with their parents. So. And then those who have very special circumstances often that not all families can meet. So it's kind of a different issue to talk about when people say there are lots of children who need to be adopted and like there aren't enough families to take them. There are a lot of loving families. That said, Latter-day Saints should always be, the first in line to step in and help children, to take them into their homes if they need a home one way or another.
For sure.
And on this topic, I didn't have this prepped, but the church does have a stance. Are you familiar enough with it that you could share, like summarize it?
As in just
like, I guess
like the church newsroom, the church handbook, or what?
Either. I guess end goal is just like what ends up happening with our focus on eternal families with adoption. How does that
on adoption? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Yeah, just that adoption is a righteous path for the families who choose to follow it, and that it's a blessing for the children and the parents, and it can be a hard journey, but it can be very rewarding as well, and that God, makes room in his family for all children as well. So
awesome. And there are ways that, children who are adopted obviously can get sealed into the family that they are with. Yeah. Is there any, I don't know, we could even do probably a whole full other episode about this, but any note about like their birth parents or their birth family? It just seems kind of cloudy to me, like how that would work with like being sealed to your adoptive family, but then also having your birth parents, if that makes sense?
I believe I looked into this, and I would love if somebody wanted to correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's possible to be sealed to both families, both your adopted family and your family of origin, I believe.
Cool. Yeah, we'll have to dive into this another time. I apologize for not having this prep because I know it is relevant with this topic, but I believe in a merciful God, and I'm sure, you know, things work out. I don't want to have a cop-out answer, but I do know a family that has had their children sealed to them that they've adopted, and they are the most beautiful family. I'm so happy for them, and it was such a joyful day. So I'm grateful for that, for sure. Switching gears a little bit, we have an advice segment on our show where we have people submit things, where we find things on Reddit. I found this one on Reddit because it was specifically related to this topic, but I wanted to read the scenario and get your take on it. So it says, I was born into and raised in the church. I got married at 19, had a child by 20, and was going through divorce by 21. After my husband told me he wanted the divorce, I sort of spiraled, likely understatement. I started dating someone else. Both husband and boyfriend were non-members, and quickly got pregnant again. I was scared and had an abortion. Not my finest hour, but done is done. I had already stopped attending church by this time, so the abortion really didn't have anything to do with the lack of going. I never stopped believing the religion, just the everyday people and the rules. I enjoyed rebelling. The common stuff, drink, smoke, sex is what it says. My question, I know the church says that murder will never be forgiven in this life or the next. So to me, this means no matter if I tried to come back, that I would never be forgiven. True? This is also not going to be my deciding factor as to whether or not I ever start to attend again. This has just been a question I've had for, 20 years now. Thanks.
If anyone is in that situation, I want them to know that there is redemption. And as far as has been revealed, you can find repentance and peace after an abortion. And it's absolutely worth seeking, even and especially after 20 years.
Beautiful. I want to add to that. There's a quote here by, let's see. This is from a talk by Elder Packer. I just wanted to read it. I thought it fit. So it says, long ago, a woman tearfully told me that as a college student, she had made a serious mistake with her boyfriend. He had arranged for an abortion. In due time, they graduated and were married and had several other children. She told me how tormented she now was to look at her family, her beautiful children, and see in her mind the place, empty now, where that one child was missing. If this couple understands and applies the atonement, they will know that those experiences and the pain connected with them can be erased. No pain will last forever. It is not easy, but life was never meant to be easy or fair. Repentance and the lasting hope that forgiveness brings will always be worth the effort.
Yeah.
You can't go so far that Jesus can't accept you. His atonement is infinite and eternal. You can never go so far that you can't come back to him.
Yeah.
I was curious though, because someone said that on their mission, there was like a mission president had mentioned that if you had an abortion, you had to have a special interview.
Yeah. I think that's still in place today.
Yeah, that's true.
Like it's part of the baptismal interview. So like they go through it. Yep. That happened on my mission as well. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know much about the process of the repentance process, I guess, with abortion. Do either of you want to speak to that if you know anything about it?
I mean, I haven't done it myself personally, but it usually involves counseling with your bishop.
Okay.
And he'll help you walk through that.
I think they just do the interview just to like, not even just like gain like information, but just kind of like explain like, hey, look, like I know the missionaries probably taught you this, just like extra help. Like, look, like you're about to commit to being a member of the church. Just so you know, this we do consider this a high, like very seriously, right? So I really just think that's like the process with it. At least that's how I understood it on my mission. Just have like that authority, like mission president, just like kind of more support.
Yeah, I think that's important, especially with the convert baptisms, to go to the mission president and, have someone older than the age of 19 to, with a little bit more experience and a little bit more authority to be able to tell you that, that you're forgiven and that this will be okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. Real quick. To the woman who sent this in saying that she's stopped going to church because of the abortion, because she's enjoyed the things of the world, smoking, drinking, sex. Like, welcome to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. You're a sinner just like the rest of us, right? It's like And like Mimi said, the atonement is infinite and eternal. So through Jesus Christ, you are covered, right? And it's just up to you, like when you want to come back to him. The smoking, the drinking, the sex, everything, like no matter what sin you do, like it's covered because of Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? So don't let that be the reason why, you know, you leave the church or don't stop coming to church. You know, like Jesus got you, you know, so come back to church because, you know, Jesus has been with you from the beginning and to the end. So I really think it's sad when people want to, you know, leave because they feel that guilt and shame. But I really feel like that's from the world and other people, right? So.
Well, I mean, it can also be the wound that is like irritated every time you're around the spirit and they know that they've done something wrong. And if you're feeling that without repenting and without changing, confessing, whatever you need to do, it's not going to feel good. So you're not going to want to be there. And it doesn't help when people are judging or making you feel less than for it. But I mean, the solution is to run to Jesus, not hide from him.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else that's going to fill you, even though people will spend the rest of their lives trying to hide from that hurt.
Yeah. I wonder if church culture at all plays a role in this too, because I mean, I don't have the exact quote, but we know like the two greatest sins are murder and then I don't know what you call it, just like breaking law of chastity, adultery are the two main ones. I feel like because those are so focused on and like we call them the worst. Well, first of all, I mean, maybe this is the world, like from the world's perspective, but this is definitely from the world's perspective. But like murder is way worse than like sex outside of marriage for the world. And so I think in the church, there is like just such a shame around sex. And this is like, again, we could go on a whole other episode about this, but I feel like we need to separate that. Like, yes, those are two of the gravest sins, but like there's people here who think maybe it was the abortion part of it, but I think there are people out there who are like, I had sex outside of marriage, like I can never go back because adultery is seen as the highest sin next to murder. So what can we do about that?
I mean, frankly, I don't think it helps a whole lot to like emphasize so much about like how terrible it is because I mean, everybody's a sinner. Everyone's got their things. And it's only helpful to know about like how bad it is only in as far as it leads you to repent more and to know how seriously to take it and to not just push it under the rug. But I mean, just to acknowledge that everyone's got their things that they struggle with and that's normal. And the more that we talk about it, the less shame we have to feel about it, and the more we can just help each other overcome.
Totally. I love that. That's great.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Talk about it more than rather than having it bottled up. I want to change that about church culture. You know what I'm saying? Like these, like it doesn't matter who it is. Like breaking the law of chastity before you're married, drinking or struggling with word of wisdom. Like instead of like hiding it, I guarantee you someone else is going through it. So just open up. I know it's hard to open up. Of course, you don't want to confess your sins to anyone. Like that's for you and Bishop and the Lord. But at the same time, it's like help out we can help out each other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it's also important as we see other people, if you see someone who's pregnant, who's not married, to keep in mind, you really don't know what she's going through. Even if you think she's told you what's going on, there's so much to that story. I mean, you might not know if it wasn't her fault. You know, she didn't ask for that. And she hasn't participated in sin. Or maybe she has and she's repented. Or maybe she's working super hard, like harder than you've ever worked on anything in your life. And it's just not our place to know what's going on in someone's life. It's just our job to love them and try to help them.
Yeah, you just never know. I agree.
It's so sad in some of the moments where I feel like members, and myself included, I'm sure we've all experienced this, where we can be the most judgmental are those people who are the people who need our help the most. Like if we see a pregnant woman who's outside of wedlock, like love her, be so glad that she made the choice to continue with her pregnancy and see what she needs, support her. Like that should be our role as members. Yeah. So I love this. And I love that we're talking about this. So thank you guys for being open, because I mean, to be vulnerable and like have these conversations, I think is really valuable. So I appreciate it.
Especially you, Jessica, because like me and Mimi talk about this all the time. Like we are so open with our beliefs and what we feel, right? With the topic of abortion, like people are going to be like watching this and just be so grateful that you took the time to do this, because they're thinking that in their hearts and minds, they just don't, and that's fine, but they just don't have the courage to come out and say it on Third Hour Podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're welcome. I've already demolished half of my friendships over it anyway. It's fine.
I'm sorry, man.
I know that.
You should never.
But you know what? I've made so many friends for it too. I mean, when you have something that you care about a lot and you work together for it, I mean, those are strong ties.
and it was prophesied about. Like you're doing amazing things. And that leads actually perfectly into the last question I at least had for you, which is abortion is obviously a very hot topic. It's very politically charged. How can you and how can us as members handle conversations with people who have different opinions on abortion that we do?
Yes. So can I back up just a little bit in answering that? So number one, I think it has to start in the home. The same way that Come Follow Me and all gospel learning begins in the home and is church supported. We need to be having these conversations with our children, with our roommates, with our spouses, the people in our closest circles. And by the way, we do have on our website some free home evening guides that can help people walk through it. They're super easy and they're for different age groups.
Dope.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Highly recommend. Even like my 3-year-old could, like she loved the 3-year-old lesson. That was very easy, open and go, fun activities to just create the foundation that you're a child of God and that children are a blessing and that you are wonderful, basically.
That's so
and
cool.
then moving up to different age groups to talk more specifically about what the church has said about it and open the door for those conversations. So it has to start there, like, and not just with people that you disagree with, or while you're forming your opinion. It's important to start in the home.
Or not in elementary school. You know, conversations like this are supposed to be in the home. So
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Well, yeah, that's another can of worms.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you go out and you talk to other people, either in the church or out of the church, I mean, there's a lot of things will help you to have that conversation. Well, I mean, the first thing is to be really prayerful and have your own testimony in order, as well as to be a peacemaker and to love everyone that you're speaking to. One really important thing is to define your terms and make sure we know what we're talking about. Because, I mean, I've talked to people who consider themselves pro-choice, and I consider myself pro-life, and they're like, well, I'm pro-choice because women need to have the opportunity to have an abortion if their life is in danger. I'm like, well, actually, like, that's not that far off from what I believe. I think that women should be able to, like, preserve their own life if they are in danger. So like there's a lot more common ground if we ask questions and we make sure we understand what we're talking about and not talking past each other. But listening and loving is really key.
I love that. And I'm so sorry. We're low on time, but I just thought of another question that I actually really wanted to ask you. So more political question again.
Cool.
So Roe versus Wade, obviously that whole thing happened this last year. Abortion is illegal. And there are some states, there's like different state laws that differ, you know, across state lines. In some states, Texas is specifically one I was thinking of, is they made it illegal for women to get an abortion even if their life was at risk, like especially with ectopic pregnancies. Like that was the big one that kind of arose from that. And women whose lives were in danger weren't able to get an abortion in their state. They were having to go, you know, drive far distances to literally preserve their own lives. So my question, 2-part question is, what is the Latter-day Saints' responsibility for, you know, voting and things related to abortion? And second, in that case, like in Texas specifically, if voters were able to either vote pro-life or pro-choice, but pro-life meant that exception of women aren't able to end pregnancies if their life is at stake, like what do you do in that situation? Do you vote pro-choice because women need to have that option?
So first of all, Latter-day Saints for Life makes room for people who like believe in like the full swath of like no abortion at all. Like as far as, I mean, not counting like ectopic pregnancy typically. And then those who believe it should be legal or accessible for and up to those exceptions that are listed in the church handbook. So there's room for a little bit of variety of opinion. As far as the Texas law, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I understand, the law did make preservations for the life of the mother. There have been complications with the follow through, or like the different specifics of different people's cases. So, I mean, you can get into the nitty gritty of everybody's case per se and argue about whether or not it's being executed properly. But there's a good argument that, you know, Latter-day Saints should certainly at the very least allow women to, you know, preserve their life and their serious health in the case of their pregnancy or choosing abortion. So there's a little bit of gray area as far as the church is concerned. But I mean, most of us will believe that women should have the opportunity to preserve their own life.
Yes. And I should have noted that, yes, they did actually reverse that, but it was like months later, and there were many women who like did go through that all. But it reminded me of the question when you were talking about talking to people with different beliefs and how there's a lot of gray area and how there's often more common ground that we think. And so I just think if there's one thing that I leave with you guys, is that just like go into conversations like this with open hearts. People, whether they're pro-life, pro-choice, wherever you are on the spectrum, just go in with an open heart and assume the best in people, I think, because everyone who has an opinion on this matter is obviously, they're thinking that is the right choice for people. And it's really helpful that we have the church's stance and we have quotes from prophets and apostles and scriptures that help us making this, and I guess gaining our own testimony on the matter. But go in open, and sometimes there's gray areas, especially with laws, like things are never going to be perfect. So go in with an open heart, be prayerful in your decision, and you can always turn to the church's resources as well. So
exactly.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add while you were here that you wanted to leave with our audience?
Just that, some people will say like, well, shouldn't the church like be doing something if this really matters? Like, why should anybody like even talk about it? Why don't we just like go all laissez-faire and like not even discuss the issue, not worry about it in politics, whatever, and just let the world worry about that because this is just our religious issue. But I mean, we have, I don't know if you remember the 2016 religious like freedom and political involvement kind of initiative that the church did in the United States. I was on my mission at the time. It impressed me a lot that, our duties as Latter-day Saints are to go and be the hands and feet of the church. That's what Reina Burto said a few years ago, that we are the hands and feet. We are the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And we don't need to sit around and wait for an invitation to do every good thing that can be done. We can go out and we can go support a pregnant woman. We can go out and we can try to make the political change that we want to see. And we don't need to wait for other people to make those decisions for us or to just pray it away, although prayer is super like the best thing to do in all cases. But just that there's room for everyone to do something. I encourage people to check out Latter-day Saints for Life, sign the pledge. There's, that makes a difference too, to show the world that that's who we are. And it's an opportunity for you to sign your testimony to it.
Awesome. Yeah. And I wanted to ask, thank you again for coming on. This was such a great conversation. You handled it with so much grace. Where can people keep in touch with you and your organization?
You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Latter-day Saints for Life. That's FOR, not the number 4. You can follow me at jessica.spack on Instagram. I do abortion and church-related stuff. Yeah.
She's great. She's
Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And if you guys, we really want to hear your thoughts, feel free to leave a comment. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm sure Jessica would probably be open to doing like some kind of follow-up episode if we need to. But I think this was a great start. So thank you again. And thank you guys for watching.
Absolutely.
Yay.